introduce you, and it is difficult to speak about somebody that one knows for so long. Keep in mind that I studied architecture with Joaquin Alvado in Valencia University, and from the very beginning, we always were convinced that we had to learn beyond the classroom. And I remember the memorable trip, for example, to La India, that we went there to live for a month, looking at the work by Le Corbusier. After that, when we finished architecture, our paths, they were different directions. But then we met 10 years later, when I was invited to teach at the new School of Architecture of Alicante, and Joaquin was there. So in this, all that common, that shared life with Joaquin Alvado, I've been teaching with him for many, many years. I have learned from him his bad English. No, I'm joking. His good Spanglish, I would say. Because his good Spanglish that brings with that a new architecture vocabulary, because there are new meanings to the words in that mixture of the things. Then with him, I have learned meanings of these words that you will recognize. Circus, risk, dynamic knowledge, and opportunities. Basically, I think that there are his concerns for these ideas, for ideals, that they go beyond aims, practical aims, I believe is his best contribution to this project, University of Universities. So let's toast for Joaquin Alvado.
Thank you. Okay, let's go. When I was studying architecture, there's something that I was all the time asking myself is what we talk about when we talk about architecture. And that's the question all my life I was trying to answer. And what I was listening at the School of Architecture was something that I was not agree with, because they were talking about something, and I thought, Javier, you can share, please. And my ideals are talking about another kind of things. Then I start my thesis in one idea is about that, what we talk when we talk about architecture. And there's something is this idea of that we were every time talking about static cities. All the words that talk about architecture was related to static cities. And I think that this idea of dynamic cities is what we start talking about things like this. This is a work I was working with Toyo Ito, and Toyo Ito was talking about the pink lake, the color because of some biological action. And then working with this biological action, we were talking about skins and how an elastic skin could be the design of a project, and how this elasticity is talking about life itself, and how we can produce this elasticity into, we can let this in the landscape in a natural way. And it can move with the use of people, and it can be moved with the wind. And then this conversation with Toyo Ito and this conversation about the vortex, the thing that changed, the point that changed everything, was for me a new discovery. At the same time, I was working in my thesis, and with this idea of the conversation must be in another way. And this idea of dynamicity is something I was always working with. We, Toyoito, and with my help, Toyoito designed 3 shells, and this shell was on the landscape, no? And this is the design of one, as you can see. The design is the skin itself. No? The structure is the skin and is over the landscape. And these cocoons was designed with an structure of pentagons, no? That was from one point to the other point and was covered with copper. And you can see from the inside, you know, this idea of the 3 rods that was starting from one point and changing to the other. With this idea, I start projecting. I was thinking that when a train passes through, there is something that remains, something that moves. And it's a dynamic situation and a station because of the pass of the train. Or when we were designing a lookout in a palm trees, we have to think about the elasticity of these palms and how it produces a movement. In this design, when you are in the upper part, you move 1 meter, 20 centimeters is the movement that you have. And then when I was working with some trees, I was thinking it is dynamicity. The structure has to move at the same time than the palm trees. No, it's a combination of movements. Is when you are walking, you are feeling like you are walking through that trees. This idea of elasticity is easy because you can feel sick, but these structural elements could be moved. And then when I have to design a house, a single house, I was asked to design the house, but I was thinking in designing the garden. I think that the garden was the main part of the house, nor the house itself. And this level of garden is the way to produce life in this house. And it's something you can see here in the 2 photographs are in different seasons, and it changed the way you understand this house or this garden. No, I call it garden house. No, and this idea of the garden is to introduce refurbishment into a building, is to introduce a tree. No? To introduce something that is going to produce a new understanding of the project. It happened after this competition that I have a commission, and what I did is like plant a tree, no? An elastic space that when you go inside the space move. No? You are going there to sleep, and then it goes down 30 centimeters. No? And when you go out, the house returns to their position. No? You can do it. No? And then with this idea of the vortex, no, I was talking so many years before with Toyoito, when I have to design a promenade, I start thinking in how life is produced in this promenade. And this is a fantastic situation that happened in Alicante, that the chairs they left the chairs in the public space and people use it and go somewhere. No? And trying to measure this kind of things was the way to produce this living situation in the promenade. And how is produced this living? Moving through this path. No? And how you move is the way you are producing this living situation. That's why with these materials, we can appreciate the way we understand this promenade. The promenade near the beach is a promenade by sun, and the promenade appears and disappears at the same time the wind or the atmosphere or the weather are producing this architecture. Then I have the possibility of working with this situation in a main street near the beach, and for me the project was the same, was trying to understand how you produce this movement and how this brightness of the sun or this opportunity of understanding how you walk, how you feel the space, how you understand this space is how I was trying to design this path through the through this town. Then and to understand the idea of infrastructure, I have to work in the design of a building around the bridge, no? And I understood in this project that the bridge is not something to pass through, it is something to connect. And the building was something that need to be part of the bridge, and not to be part, sino to understand that the infrastructure is in a space to join things. No? And that's why when I did it School of Art, I have to understand the bridge as something to connect. Then I have the possibility of working in the design of a bridge. And for me, this idea of the design of a bridge was how a bridge, instead of being a place to pass through from one side to the other, is an infrastructure that could join two spaces. This is the beach, I call it the Kiss Bridge, because there's a neighborhood that was abandoned in this city because of there is a flood of water on October or November every year, and the neighborhood on the right is always empty, and it's difficult to connect these two spaces. That's why I understood this bridge as a kiss, no? as a connection instead of a space to pass through. And this idea of connecting is this idea of that in one side and in the other side, there are two different ways of understanding the living in this town. This town is Pilar de la Horadada. And every idea that I always tell the student, every idea, every work that I do is something that I use for the next project, because it's my background, is working with this idea of connection, working with this idea of nature, working with this idea of elasticity, with this idea of atmosphere. I was commissioned to design a house, but the owner of the house was someone that swims every day. Then, instead of designing a house, I start thinking in designing a swimming pool. And the swimming pool was the main core of this design. And when I was talking about this swimming pool, I was talking about the atmosphere that creates. No, that's why I was working a lot with models and with these perspectives, because I was trying to understand this atmosphere that changed because the sun passed from one side to the other, and the reflections, the humidity change every day. And when you enter the house, you enter by a bridge. And there are two bridges, like a Y is one that you can see that connect the two spaces for the child and for the couple of the family, and then another that goes up. the house. No? And this connection between bridges is to understand this space. You have to feel it, because with an image is impossible. No, this atmosphere, the reflection. You can see the sun, how change every reflection, and when you pass from one side to the other side, is a new situation, and it works. For me, it's fantastic, because I receive a phone call every year telling me that they are happy, and that for me it works. And talking about dynamicity, and talking about what we talk about when we talk about architecture, I was commissioned to design the future of a city, is Benidorm, and what Europe is asking us is what I was thinking, is this idea of a public design, this idea of sustainability, accessibility, inclusion, citizenship. I have to work a lot with the city of Benidorm and trying to understand with all of them the relation between the city and the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Benidorm is a fantastic city. And this idea of dynamicity, I was trying to take this idea into the city. And that's why I project the main avenue of Benidorm and try to change the relation between the city and the avenue. No? Because I was thinking in this as a public space, then it need to be a kind of saloon, a kind of living room, because everybody goes there and lives. And changing this idea of in a space as a public space for car, I was thinking that it could be a space for people, and was ideas that was designed with people. And the use of this street now is like a museum. Now I was there today, and there are some sculptures there, and I'm designing now a big screen, two big screens. And I was talking today that on June we can have a concert there, and people that usually goes with their chairs to the in the morning to the beach would go in the afternoon, in the evening here to listen to a concert, to visit a sculpture, to understand life as a dynamic city. And then at the end, what I was trying to talk is about nature. I'm trying to talk about accessibility, inclusion, gender, atmosphere, and I'm comfortable with this conversation, and I'm trying to throw this conversation into my teaching and my learning, and I think it's the future. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hakim, it was amazing. Really, really very nice to see a good architecture and good architectural thinking and thinking about public space. I really like the open space in the city when you put the lights over. I think it is very clever, because I always think about the paving, but you show that it is possible also to think about the ceiling in the city. Great, a lot of very good stuff.